Operation Epic Fury.
Here's the number that blew the whole scam apart. 12.5 million barrels of oil moved through the Strait of Hormuz last night, the highest since the conflict began. Not a think tank memo, not another CNN panic panel, real barrels, real ships, real relief. And while that happened, J.D. Vance said gas dropped below $4 a gallon for the first time since the fighting, and the stock market roared, and Iran skipped a second straight night of firing its ships. Donald Trump didn't hand Tehran a blank check. He put Iran in a chokehold, smashed key military capacity, reopened the choke point, and made the anti-Trump class look stupid again. This matters because the Strait of Hormuz is not some abstract patch of water for foreign policy hobbyists. It's the artery that pumps energy into your economy, your grocery bill, your commute, and every truck that moves food across this country. When Iran jams that route, American families get hammered. When Donald Trump breaks that leverage, your costs fall, and fast. And that's why the most important line today didn't come from a legacy media propagandist. It came from the vice president. 12.5 million barrels moved through the strait. Gas fell below $4, and more declines are coming. Now, look at the corruption machine. Barack Obama and the foreign policy priesthood, they bribed the mullahs and called it sophistication. The same establishment class that swore Trump would drag America into chaos now chokes on a roaring market, falling oil, resumed ship traffic, and an Iran that stopped shooting at vessels for two straight nights. Donald Trump shattered the old lie that America must choose between endless war and surrender. He used force, leverage, and a ticking 60-day deadline. Your wallet will feel the difference. And speaking of things that work in the real world instead of on a consultant's white paper, let me hit this quickly. You've probably seen a clip of Joe Rogan sitting with Mel Gibson talking about people close to him who went through serious health struggles and then saw dramatic turnarounds. Rogan brings up light-based therapies and how they impact the body at a cellular level. Gibson says it's straight the stuff works, and it got my attention because in my own life I watched something very similar unfold. For a long time, my wife was dealing with constant discomfort and anxiety. It was one of those draining battles that wears you down. Then we found red light therapy through Jonathan Otto. We gave it a shot, and it made a real difference. If you want to check it out, go to myredlight.com, use NNN25 for individual items or NNN30 for bundles, and make sure you check out the interviews with Jonathan right here on this channel. When something brings real relief, you don't hide it. You pass it on. Now, back to the part that sent the media into a tailspin. Iran posted the executed memorandum online, and the document included the headline-grabbing clause about a $300 billion reconstruction framework in sanctions language. The usual frauds sprinted to scream that Trump was funding Iran. Then J.D. Vance blew that lie to pieces in one sentence. The Obama deal gave them over $1 billion of American money. This deal gives them $0 of American money. That's the pivot. Not surrender, conditional leverage. And in a minute, I'm going to go ahead and present to you the tweets because Trump's own words pour gasoline on this. This is from Rapid Response 47. President Trump posting this to Truth Social. Oil is flowing. Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. The world will be safe. The stock markets are roaring. Jobs are at records. And prices are dropping. Affordability. Our country is strong, safe, and respected like never before. You're welcome, President DJT. So Trump says the results are already on the board. Oil flowing, prices dropping. Now Fox shows the first hard proof of falling energy prices in the 60-day Iran deal framework taking effect. It's already having an impact. President Trump formally marked the extension of the ceasefire. Oil and gas prices continued falling. The memorandum launches a 60-day push towards a final deal with provisions that include reopening key routes, easing sanctions, access to frozen Iranian funds, and renewed negotiations over Iran's nuclear program. Here it is.
President Trump signed the Memorandum of Understanding, formally marking the extension of the ceasefire with Iran. He was joined by French President Emmanuel Macron and Secretary of State Rubio, among others. We know on the Iranian side, Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian was responsible for signing the document in the capital of Tehran. Earlier in the day, the president talked about this agreement, what it means, and what happens if it isn't enforced.
It's a memorandum of understanding. If it doesn't get done in 60 days, that's all right. We go back to bombing. You know, I don't want to do that because it's so good. But we might have to because we're never going to let them have a nuclear weapon. But they've agreed not to, and you'll see that very clearly in the agreement. We're not putting up money. only if they're doing things right. If they're doing things right, if people want to invest, they can invest.
On Wednesday, a U.S. official read the agreement to reporters. Within the deal includes an immediate end to hostilities across the region, including in Lebanon. The final deal must be reached within 60 days, with the possibility of an extension. This is related to Iran's nuclear program and the details that are yet to be discussed. The U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports will end, the Strait of Hormuz will open, and the Iranians will receive tiered sanctions relief based on their performance and their agreements with the United States. Now, on the issue of negotiations, Iran's Parliament Speaker Mohammad Khalibaf, their top negotiator, said this.
The difference between the negotiations now and the previous periods is that today the flag of victory is in the field, which both enemies and friends have admitted. Our people saw the glory of the armed forces too, even though they were against the well-equipped enemy.
This is really a wait-and-see moment. The world is waiting to see if the Iranians will adhere to the agreement and if they are serious about these nuclear concessions as it relates to their program. Now, more broadly, the region is prepared for the possibility that this deal collapses. But at this moment, the president is touting the diplomatic success and what it will mean for the stock market and the oil market.
I still think they should have taken the Strait of Hormuz and Karg Island. So the market heard the message. Oil started sliding in hopes that this ceasefire hold next Trump fires back. Usual weak-kneed critics demanding even more as stock hits records and crude keeps tumbling. These fools, he writes, who think I haven't been tough enough on Iran when the stock market just hit a record high and oil prices are tumbling down are either jealous, bad people, or stupid. Make America great again. You gotta love the tweets from the president. So his answer to the panic crowd is simple. The market's up, oil's down. Now the vice president brings the receipts, including 12.5 million barrels moving through the strait. He hosted the press briefing today in another rare moment as the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, is still out on maternity leave.
I think the president's peace plan in Iran is already bearing real fruits for the American people. Last night, 12.5 million barrels of oil went through the Strait of Hormuz. That is a high since the beginning of the conflict. Oil prices are down nearly at their level from the pre-war conflict. Gas prices dropped below $4 a gallon today for the first time since the conflict. And importantly, they're going to keep falling further given how low oil prices are. On the military side, the Iranians, for the second night in a row, did not shoot at any ships in the Strait of Hormuz. So far, they are honoring their end of the commitment. And on the blockade, CENTCOM has allowed north of a dozen ships to go through our naval blockade, and so we're also honoring our end of the early part of the agreement. On the military side, a couple of things that are still true and will be true whether the Iranians comply with the rest of the deal or not. Number one, their nuclear program has been completely destroyed. Their capacity for enrichment, the facilities at which they were using to develop enrichment and develop a potential nuclear weapon, those facilities are still destroyed. Their conventional military is still destroyed. Their capacity to threaten their neighbors is still largely gone. And now we see whether they are willing to comply with the next step of the president's peace plan.
Continuing. That's the real-world test. More oil moving, lower gas prices, and Iran not firing on ships. Next, take a look at the traffic that is moving through the strait right now. It is active, buzzing like a bee. Oh, yes. Ship traffic officially resumes in the strait after U.S. and Iran sign the deal to end the war. So the map tells the story. Ships are moving again through one of the world's biggest choke points. Now the vice president takes on the media spin directly, saying Iran gets nothing unless it fully complies. This from the press briefing today.
Part of the peace plan, the part of this MOU that I think have been most misrepresented by certain parts of the media is the idea that the Iranians get all these benefits. You will hear things about $300 billion or $24 billion or this or that number of money or amount of money. And the simple fact is that the only way the Iranians get any of those resources, not a single penny, by the way, from the United States of America under any circumstances, but the only way that they would ever get any benefit of the bargain is if they comply fully and change their behavior. And so you really have a win-win situation for the United States of America. If the Iranians don't change their behavior, their military and their nuclear program is still destroyed. If they do change their behavior, then they are going to have a transformative relationship with the Middle East, and the Middle East will have a transformative relationship with the people of Iran. That's a win for the American people and for the President of the United States, regardless of which option the Iranians ultimately choose. We obviously want them to choose the right option. The interesting thing about their system, and I think it's important for the American people to appreciate this point in particular, is that there are real divisions, over the last couple of months, is that the pragmatists within the Iranian system, the people who really do want to transform their relationship with the Middle East and with the world, those people the argument. The United States wants those people to win the argument. The United States wants to have a better relationship, but in order for that to happen, the Iranians have to perform. And if they don't perform, as we've said before, they don't get any of the benefits of the bargain. So what I ask all of you is just to report honestly that the United States isn't giving up a cent of money to Iran, and even the economic benefits, the sanctions relief and so forth that comes along with this bargain only happens if the Iranians perform.
I want to point out that the MOU also contains no restrictions on Iran's ballistic missile program, no requirement that Hezbollah or other Iranian-backed groups disarm, no detailed prohibition on future support for those groups, no concrete human rights commitments, and no guaranteed permanently toll-free navigation through Hormuz after the initial 60 days. And also, some of the language, too, says that they are freezing their nuclear program. Now, I find that language interesting because it almost leaves the door open for them to have some type of nuclear program. Not necessarily a nuclear weapons program, but a civilian program. So there are some concerns that I have uncovered. We'll have to see how this really shakes out in the 60 days. But after seeing the shipping resume, here's the key question: who actually gets paid? The next clip answers it head on. Not one U.S. penny and no benefits for Tehran without total compliance. Here's more from the Vice President at the press briefing today.
We believe international waterways should be free of tolls, and that's been our position. That's what you see, of course, in the 60 days of the MOU. And when you say it leaves it open, it doesn't really leave it open, except in the sense that, of course, the final negotiation is going to set the terms of what comes afterwards, right? You said, I think that it's the Omanis and the Iranians, but it's actually the MOU contemplates that the Omanis, the Iranians, and the Gulf Coast Coalition together will figure out a proper security framework for the Straits in the future. And what I mean by that is that we don't ever want this to happen again. Right? That's not about tolling. That's about ensuring that the Straits are never used as a choke point for the global economy ever again. It's frankly not what the Iranians want. It's not what the Omanis want. It's not what the GCC wants either. So what we're going to do, of course, working with our allies in the region, is to ensure that that is reflected in the final deal. And if that's not reflected in the final deal, there's not going to be a final deal. And that is, I keep coming back to this fundamental structural point of this negotiation, which is that we have all the cards. If the Iranians want the benefits of the bargain, they have to give us the things that are necessary to get those benefits.
So despite the media fear campaign, the leverage stays with America next. The Vice President zeroes in on the Strait itself, saying no tolls, no future chokehold on the global economy.
We destroyed a substantial number of their ballistic missiles and their ballistic missile launchers themselves. It's not just the bullets, but it's the actual gun. And that's what we were extremely effective at in destroying during the last 3 months of the campaign. All the president said yesterday is that, of course, countries don't give up the right of self-defense. Israel doesn't give up the right of self-defense if Hezbollah fires rockets or drones at Israel. The Iranians don't give up the right of self-defense in their country, but we do expect that as part of the final deal, they are not going to be able to build the kind of missiles that can broadly threaten the entire world. And that's what the President of the United States said yesterday. And look, I mean, it's very simple. You can't tell a country, whether Israel or Iran, they're not allowed to have any self-defense. That's not what the President has asked. That's not what the President has requested. But as part of the final deal, what we want to see is Iran not funding regional instability, funding regional terrorism, and of course trying to rebuild their nuclear weapons program. That's the main thing. The nuclear weapons program is destroyed. It is gone. If the Iranians decided tomorrow to build a nuclear weapon, they simply don't have the capacity in order to do that. What we're trying to ensure is they don't rebuild that capacity, not just a year from now, 2 years from now, but many, many years from now, so that our children never have to worry about a state sponsor of terrorism having a nuclear weapon.
So keeping Hormuz open is step one, but Trump world says the military pressure isn't going anywhere. Next, the vice president explains what was destroyed and why Iran won't be allowed to rebuild missiles that threaten the world.
They would have to get a lot of money in order to rebuild a nuclear program. You're talking about billions and billions of nuclear infrastructure that the United States destroyed. In order for them to rebuild that program, they would have to get a lot of money. And we have them in an economic chokehold right now that we're not going to release until they fundamentally change their behavior. What would that look like? That would mean a real inspections regime. That would mean a real enforcement regime. As the MOU contemplates, that would mean the destruction of their enriched stockpile. All of these things are the sorts of steps you're going to take if you're serious about ending your nuclear weapons program. And that, again, is why I go back to this fundamental trade that's built into the deal. They need money to do anything. Their economy is in absolute dire straits. But in order for them to get any integration into the world economy, they're going to have to show us and verify for us that they are changing their behavior. And that's why the deal is set up in the way that it is.
So it matters because this is not just about shipping lanes, it's about making sure the regime stays boxed in. Next, the vice president lays out the economic chokehold, real inspections, and what enforcement would actually require.
The difference between the two agreements. So, first of all, the two big differences are not even in the substance of the deal itself, but something I said earlier are, number one, the Gulf Coast Coalition loves this deal because they think that it makes Iran weaker. They hated the Obama deal because they thought that it made Iran stronger. They know more about this, and they have more to lose than anybody, including the United States of America, so I trust their judgment. The second thing is where the deal came from. You have to remember, in 2015, Iran had built a sophisticated nuclear weapons program with a nuclear weapons stockpile. So the perspective that we came at as the United States was, you already have a really nice nuclear program, we're going to bribe you with American money in order to stop it. Our perspective and where we're coming at it is, we already destroyed your nuclear program. And so if you promise and show verifiable pathways to not rebuild it, then we're willing to give you some sanctions relief and things like that. So it's a fundamentally different perspective. Now, there are all these substantive differences as well. The Obama nuclear deal allowed enrichment. Ours will not. The Obama deal allowed the accumulation of stockpiled weapons-grade material. Ours is actually leading to the destruction of that stockpile of enriched material. So there are many differences. The Obama deal gave them over $1 billion of American money. This deal gives them $0 of American money. So a lot of substantive differences, but I think the most important differences are where we're coming at it from a position of strength and the fact that our Gulf Coast partners love this deal.
So the formula, pressure first, relief after the proof next. He draws the contrast. Establishment Republicans and Democrats can't dodge. This is not Obama's cash for chaos. JCPOA.
Say to anybody, any of the critics, is number one, have a little bit of faith in the President of the United States. The idea that he is going to strike a deal that's been bad for the American people, it's preposterous. He is the person who has had the courage to fundamentally transform our relationship with Iran and with a lot of other countries over the last year and a half. He believes in this deal. He is going to see it to completion, and if the Iranians don't comply, we still have every single tool and point of leverage that we have today. That'd be message number one, is have a little faith in the president's ability, given that he's got us this far, to take us the final step. The second thing that I would say is so many of what I've read or heard that people believe about this deal is just fundamentally untrue. It is a memorandum of understanding. It is fundamentally a principle that, yes, the Straits of Hormuz are going to be open immediately, and they already are. Yes, they're going to give up their highly enriched material, but they've got to actually do it. It's about conduct. It's about rewarding good conduct and punishing bad conduct, which in some ways is what we've been doing for the last 3 months vis-a-vis that country anyway. So many of the criticisms, I saw Lindsey Graham came out with a positive statement after expressing some concerns. I think that when people get to understand not just the agreement, but our negotiating posture as a country, they will realize this is an excellent thing for the American people, but that's part of our job. We've got to tell the story about what this means for Americans, how it's going to make all of us safer and more prosperous. That's why I'm here talking to everybody, and we're going to keep on telling that story in the days and weeks to come.
So we have this. This is the full letter. Iran posting the executed memorandum of understanding, which has now taken effect. Multiple points laid out here. And as I stated before, they have the decisive question is whether Washington uses the next 60 days to obtain a quantified and rapid reduction of Iran's enriched stockpile, intrusive and continuing IAEA access, firm enrichment ceiling and limits on centrifuges and facilities, automatic restoration of sanctions for noncompliance, permanent free passage through Hormuz, enforceable provisions concerning missiles and attacks by regional partners. So that is what we're looking at, and with the signing of the agreement, we have this news that the Secret Service has removed the expanded perimeter security around the White House. It's been in place since the start of the hostilities. U.S. Secret Service and MPD cruisers no longer at checkpoints this morning. And as I was just there at the White House this past weekend, security was everywhere. It was tight. So now with the signing of the memorandum, there is renewed faith in Washington, D.C. So the moral test here is brutally simple. Do you trust Donald Trump, who destroyed billions and billions of Iran's nuclear infrastructure, wiped out a substantial number of ballistic missiles and launchers, kept sanctions leverage in place, and said flat out that if Iran blows the 60-day deal, we go back to bombing? Or do you trust Barack Obama's disciples and the media clerks who sold Americans the JCPOA disaster and now fake confusion over the phrase, not a single penny, right? See, Donald Trump posted it himself. Oil is flowing. Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. Stock markets are roaring. That's not chest thumping. That was a receipt. Shipping reopened, oil tumbled, gas dropped, even the expanded White House perimeter started coming down. Strength changed the facts on the ground. The anti-Trump class got caught worshiping failure again. So friends, celebrate the win. Then stay hard, because Trump's victory only holds if enforcement stays ruthless. No softness, no slippage, no regime press fairy tales about goodwill. J.D. Vance laid out the terms with total clarity. Not a single penny from the United States unless Iran fully complies. Real inspections, real enforcement, destruction of the enriched stockpile, no rebuilt missile threat, and every tool still sitting on the table if Tehran plays games. And that's why patriots back President Trump. He understands leverage in his bones. He doesn't bribe enemies first, then beg for promises later. He breaks their leverage, lowers your gas bill, reopens the waterway, and dares them to cheat. If CNN, MSNBC, or the Obama Alumni Club hate that, good. Let them choke on 12.5 million barrels moving through Hormuz and a market hitting records. So drop your take in the comments and send this to people still parroting the Trump-funded Iran lie, and watch what happens when America acts like America again. And since you're still here, a special treat for you. Text raw feed to 844-840-4963. That's how we're bypassing the algorithm and getting you the news you depend on when the notifications from YouTube don't arrive. I will make sure you get them. And since we're celebrating wins, celebrate America 250 with the Next News Network by going to the merch shelf below this video or shop.nextnewsnetwork.com.
The system controls information. Information control is power.
They don't want you to see this.
The truth only survives together. They don't want this shared. Share this now.